say. The seas of streaming and reviewing mods and video games. It sets the land and sail the seas and centuries have passed. Until the day a hero named Marin of famous has. Deep dark gaming, we love to play video games. We don't keep playing until the early morning. Deep dark gaming, we explain mods and games. Deep dark gaming, we sell my games and more. As Mariner set off on his quest to moving in a crew, the navigator joined the ranks and soared in Mr. Q. Sailing for adventure, stories and for treasure. We will help you through, so climb aboard and join the crew. Deep dark gaming, we love to play video games. We'll keep playing until the early morning. Deep dark gaming, we explain mods and games. Deep dark gaming, we sell the games and more.
Ahoy divers and welcome back to there we go. Ahoy divers and welcome back to Deep Dive Gaming. I am the Mariner and we return for another short stream of consciousness discussing Final Fantasy. Today we do Final Fantasy 2 with Hiro, and once he joins us, Tyrundeth. Ahoy Hiro. Ahoy Beckaloo, ahoy Mojo, ahoy Twitch and YouTube. And surprisingly enough, for the third night in a row, no Mariner Kitty. Yeah. It's like she's gotten over it or something. I'm not sure what's going on. Anyways, I'm good, Beckaloo. How are you? This is a short stream. We only go for an hour. And we're going to go ahead and get started while we wait for Tyrundeth. I'm going to hit the button on the playback here. Go over this way. And we'll turn this off until Tyrundeth can join us. So, oh, there's Foxy. Ahoy, Foxy. So, anyways, I guess I'll jump in and read from the Final Fantasy fandom wiki. Alright, well, let's see. So, we'll do a quick, I'll just read from the top on the fandom page. If you find some fact on a different wiki, go ahead and interrupt me. So, Final Fantasy II, the second installment in the Final Fantasy series, developed and published by Squaresoft, as we saw, released in December 1988 for the family computer exclusively in Japan. Oh, and I should mention, we are going in original Japanese order in this series. So, we will be talking about, when we say Final Fantasy II, we mean legitimately Final Fantasy II. So, anyways, it was released worldwide for PlayStation and Game Boy Advance. Whoa, I did not know this. PlayStation Portable, iOS, Android, other platforms. Oh, no, later released. Okay, I didn't read that. Okay, it's directed by Hiro Nobu. Butcher of the minute. Hironobu Sagaguchi and Yoshitaka Amano designing the characters, and Nobuo Uematsu composing the score. It was notable for being one of the first story-intensive. Thank you. Notable for being one of the first story-intensive RPGs released for console systems, predated by Final Fantasy 1. And introduced many series staples, including chocobos and a character named Sid. Ooh. And as per usual, the story of Final Fantasy II was unrelated to the previous Final Fantasy. Gameplay is major departure from previous title for eliminating the traditional experience-based progression system. I did not know that was a thing. Let's see. I'm gonna check really quick to see if Tyrundeth joined yet. Oh, I just saw him. Here he is. Okay, let me get back over to here. Let me turn on his face. Voila. Ahoy, Tyrundeth. Brief pause as he sets up his audio. There you go. That's okay. We decided while we waited, we would just read from the Final Fantasy II fandom wiki page. We just got to the paragraph. We just finished talking about how we got series staples such as Chocobos, Sid, and the breakaway from the traditional experience-based progression system. Would you like to take us over? Oh, shoot. Hang on a second. I just realized no one can hear anybody.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Now they can hear you. Fortunately, Hiro has not contributed anything to the conversation yet, so we're good to go. Would you like to contribute to the conversation now, Hiro or Tyrundeth?
I will yield to Tyrundeth first.
Well, I will say this. This is actually one of the first instances of the signature Final Fantasy mascot, the Chocobo, or depending on who you're talking to, the Thunder Chicken.
Thunder
They were originally called Thunder Chickens in Japanese, I believe. But, hey, I mean, it started there.
Yup.
So, what I do have to say is, since I did kind of make a peanut gallery comment earlier, I'll go ahead and reiterate because you did mention it's one of the very first appearances of the legendary Easter egg known as Sid.
Yeah, I knew he was a character that carried over from other games in various forms or other.
There's actually at minimum 2 character names that carry over from game to game, at least after Final Fantasy II. The initial, like Final Fantasy I, if I remember correctly, it didn't have a lot of those Easter eggs, and I don't think there was a Sid in the very first Final Fantasy. I'm not sure on that one. I think you would have to ask Tyrundeth, since he is the lore master of Final Fantasy in my book.
Well, to a degree, I'm a lore master, not the lore master.
Better than me, that's
this
for sure.
is actually the first occurrence of Sid in the series.
Again?
This is the first occurrence of Sid in the series.
That's what I thought.
If I remember correctly, it might also be the first appearance of Golbez.
The first
But
appearance of which?
that I'm a little less certain. The final boss, Golbez.
Oops. I just did a search, but it went to Discord instead of my browser, and I will look that up for you. There is no name, or that name is not there. Also, to note, as we kind of progress through all these stories, throughout the coming weeks, I'll point out that while in the initial release of all of these Final Fantasies, I think I kind of hinted at it before, and I think we also probably said it last week. None of these stories of Final Fantasy were ever actually interconnected, except for the specific direct sequels of 13,
10-2,
and 10-2. Yeah, it was 10-2 and 13 Lightning Returns. Those were the only 2 that had actual direct sequels initially that had anything to do with each other. But there was not originally an interconnected thread of story until I think it was, I really truly believe it was the most recent expansion of Final Fantasy XIV. and they started they started to weave kind of a it was like a retcon, but not really a retcon, that kind of started to weave an actual story of all of the Final Fantasies actually tying together. And I think that actually started with the launch. I think they coincided. It was the launch of Final Fantasy Remake and the most recent expansion to 14. And then they actually directly referenced this interconnected lore with Final Fantasy 16. Like they directly referenced it. But I can be corrected.
Well, you're the secondary lore master here. I don't know enough about any of this to really be that much of a contributionist person to contribute, whatever, however you want to say it.
Depending on when you want to approach that particular commentary, we can discuss that before we jump on the live stream. But I would, again, say let's go ahead and yield the floor to Tyrundeth here to see what he has to say about Final Fantasy II outside of what he's already said.
Well, I was going to say I was actually going to say I'll leave the interconnectedness bits for the later games when they actually come in.
Makes sense.
However, yes, they do actually reference other games, typically starting with 14. Outside of that, speaking of other games, the City of Final Fantasy actually showed a few heroes and villains from the series, starting with Final Fantasy II, particularly the hero and villain, respectively.
Ah. So let's see. Kind of get the overarching plot. Oh yeah, okay, now I actually understand the Dark Knight reference.
Share with the class.
Oh, so in the very first line here on the synopsis that the Wikipedia gives, it mentions the main party being attacked by Palamecian Black Knight soldiers. Now, they say Black Knight, but if I remember correctly, Dark Knight is a class in the most recent expansion of Final Fantasy XIV. And I might be mistaken, but I feel like it might actually be a direct reference to Final Fantasy II, one of the direct references to Final Fantasy II from 14. But the main party gets attacked and left for dead. They're rescued by Princess Hilda, who is basically the rebel leader in a town of Altair after the kingdom of Finn was invaded by the Emperor. Let's see. Hilda, the princess, denies the request to join the rebel army because they're too young and inexperienced. The main character set off for Finn in search of Leon. And they find a prince that's dying, who actually turns out to be the princess's fiance. Informs them that a former nobleman of one of the towns, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, betrayed the rebellion and became a general of the Imperial Army. The party goes back to the princess and tells her, and she allows the group to join the rebellion and asks them to journey north to find mithril, a metal which could be used to create powerful weapons. They make its way north to an occupied village where they save the villagers forced to work in the nearby mines and kill the big bad guy there, and they retrieve the mithril. So that's kind of the start of the game. It looks like it's actually a pretty basic plot for fantasy plot, kind of, you know, good versus evil story. Okay, I got corrected there. Thank you, Kaori. The Dark Knight featured in Final Fantasy XIV in 2015 in the very first DLC. There'll be more to follow on that.
Yeah, Heaven's Ward rather than the most recent expansion.
Ooh, we
Yeah.
got a resub from Mojo. 9 months. Wait,
Boy, Mojo.
that can't be right. It should say more like 99 months. 24 months. I'll read the actual chat, not the notification. That was weird. Resubscribe. No, resubscribe in 5 months. Not for 9 months or 2. Okay, so thank you, Mojo. You have now been traveling for 24,000 leagues with Deep Dive Gaming. So, anyways, to continue.
Yep. Let's see. So, a lot of this plot, to me, plays out like a traditional, you know, fantasy story. You know, good versus evil, the underdogs being the good guys, trying to survive and rebelling against some emperor that's trying to take over the world.
Same thing we do every night, every Final Fantasy game, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Apparently,
Sorry, I slipped out.
Leon is, you know, as a plot point, Leon is apparently actually a turncoat for the party. Dark Knight, whom Maria recognizes as Leon. Leon ascends to the throne and plans to destroy the rebels with the Imperial Army. The party enters the castle of Palamestia, I think I pronounced it right, and confronts Leon, but the Emperor reappears in the throne room in a demonic form, revealing he has become the ruler of Hell and returned with intention of destroying the entire world. Party and Leon escape with the Wyvern, whatever, as the castle is replaced with the Palace of Hell, Pandemonium. Leon agrees to help the group seal the Emperor away. The party travels to the Jade Passage, an underground passage into the underworld, and finds the portal to Pandemonium, where they finally defeat the Emperor. Afterwards, Leon chooses to leave in response to the trouble he caused, though Tyrion assures him that he will be welcome back if and when he returns. To the end of the original game. So this game was also remade on the Game Boy Advance and includes an additional storyline that takes place after the original story ends and follows the 4 party members who died during the story of the game. Huh. Ooh, the Ultimatone. So, any comments on that, Tyrundeth? Do you have any knowledge of this?
No, you've exceeded where I knew of this. Yeah. Other
Just
than, you know, this being the obvious first instance of the Dark Knight in the series, which is the class that I was mentioning was inspired by the author of Berserk.
Right. So I'm just reading from the wiki, and we can commentate on this on the side if that would be ideal. Any disagreement?
Continue on. I'm gotten kind of lost.
No.
So the story itself is actually a short plot, which I guess the most of the hours are eaten up by leveling through RNG.
Sounds like classic Final Fantasy.
Yeah. So Soul of Rebirth, as I said, is a Game Boy Advance remake of the original that includes an additional storyline that takes place after the game, and it follows the 4 party members who died during the story of the game. I guess the main party. Scroll back. Here we go. 4 main characters and several secondary characters who are only briefly controlled by the player. So that means that the 4 party Leonhardt. Hey, I think that's actually an Easter egg for a later game. But anyways, so you've got your 4 main party members, which are the party members that actually go against the big bad guy, and then you have, it looks like, 4 other party members who later who die somewhere along the lines that aren't actually referenced in the story of the original, or in this story synopsis. So you have following his sacrifice to unseal the door guarding the Ultima Tone, Minwu awakens in a new area and sees someone resembling Gordon fight off Imperial soldiers. Minwu assists him, and the man soon explains he is Scott, Gordon's brother. Minwu informs him of the events up to his own demise, and the two surmise that they are in the Jade Passage since they both died. They find Yosef and subsequently Ricard, eventually emerging in Manshannon? Okay. A village in the mirror image of Poft, where the citizens are dead victims of the Emperor's conquest, including Sid and Tobul, with the former asking the group to find out where they are and why they have been called here. The 4 enter the teleporter at the north edge of town and enter what Minwu believes is pandemonium. Climbing to the highest floor, the party meets the Light Emperor, who explains that when Firion and his allies killed him, his soul was split with the Emperor's dark half, falling to hell and acquiring more power, while his light half, the Emperor they now see, ascended to heaven. He then explains they are in Aruboth, Palace of Heaven, and the cave they traveled through was Rakia, the place where fallen angels are cast down to become demons, and that he called them here to ask for forgiveness on behalf of his dark half and offers them eternal life with him in Arboth if they forgive his sins. Though the 4 are tempted by the offer, apparitions of their loved ones show them a vision of Firion and his allies battling the Dark Emperor in Pandemonium. Realizing this Emperor is just as evil as the original, the 4 reject his offer and defeat the Light Emperor, just as Firion and his allies vanquish the Dark Emperor. As the rebels in the world of the living celebrate their victory, the 4 specters watch them and wish them well before fading away into peaceful rest. So it looks like it's a very short DLC main quest, kind of, sort of.
And that was
more
for
parallel.
and that was
Yeah,
for
I'd say
that was for the later edition of the Final Fantasy II game when it was released.
Yes.
Ah, cool.
so. The original was obviously. Hold on. Here we go.
There's Mariner Kitty. Hi, Mariner Kitty.
So
Decided to make an
1988 was the original version. 1994 they had a few graphical updates. 2001 background images and battle scenes were redrawn sprites. Final Fantasy Origins had more detailed graphics, remixed soundtrack, FMV sequences, art galleries, memo save function. Then another re-release for 1 and 2, Dawn of Souls, in 2004. They added 4 additional dungeons, updated the bestiary, and added a few tweaks, and added that follow-on story. And of course, they re-released it on mobile phone in Japan in 2005. Did it again in Japan in 2006. Then 2011, they released it to the US on mobile phone. Came out on the PSP in 2007 and 8. Dog. The Wii Virtual Console in 2009. PlayStation Store and PS1 Classics in 2009 and 2012. iOS in 2010. The PlayStation Store downloadable PSP games in 2011. Re-released on Android in 2012. The 3DS Virtual Console in 2012. And in 2013, the Wii U Virtual Console. So this has been re-released so many times. Oh, they did another re-release, 2D remaster based on the original game, worldwide in 21, 23, and 24 on Android, iOS, Windows via Steam, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox Series X and S. So it seems like I said, this was probably a short game, long in comparison to, the old days, quote unquote, when you talk about the NES. And let's see.
Here, Mary Kitty.
I would
There
say
we go.
it's probably, like I said, a lot of the time in game was probably spent on, RNG leveling. Because the story doesn't really seem all that complex, and it seems like if you speed run it, you could probably beat it in a handful of hours. But speedrunners often get punished when it comes to RNG. Just saying.
Why is that?
Because if you get good lucky rolls, you can beat lots of bosses while severely underleveled, and then when it comes time to face, say, the final boss, you have missed several levels that are required to survive.
Ah.
Imagine, let's say, for example, a level 1 mage in D&D gets severely lucky and gets all the way to the big bad guy. And the big bad guy happens to be, say, a fighter class.
Yup. Without that shield spell and lots of it, he's doomed.
So, yeah. I think I've noticed a lot of RPGs that are turn-based or, leveling-based games. In recent years, it's come down to more strategy than it is just being over-leveled and really powerful. Great example would be a game like Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler, where you have a decent character roster, and in Octopath Traveler you have 8 characters, but only 4 people can be in a party at a time. If you neglect any of the party members or any of their job classes, when it comes down to fighting some of the stronger final bosses in that game, you actually have phases where you switch between your active party and the party members that aren't in your active party. And if they're underleveled in whatever job class they have equipped, they get trounced. So some strategy was required in some of these older games, but not nearly as much as some of these more recent RPGs that I've seen that are, again, turn-based RPGs.
Yeah. Mojo sent me a link to Golbez, and I must say, this guy looks mean.
Share.
Oh, hang on. Let me drop it over into Big Geek so you can both see it. There you go. And Golbez is in Final Fantasy. Which one was it? Final Fantasy. Come on,
Oh, yeah,
Bowser.
he does look mean.
Oh, this is Final Fantasy IV: The After Years. Or no, both. Final Fantasy IV and the playable character in Final Fantasy IV: The After Years. But yeah, just that guy that makes it look like he would be the main villain. Thank you, Mojo, for sending over that. As I've said in the past, this is my way of learning about games that I missed because I was either not paying attention or not in a position to actually play any of these games.
So yeah, Tyrundeth, you are looking at a Final Fantasy IV character. He did not appear in 2, but again,
Yeah, I probably confused that with the Emperor,
could be.
because I know there are certain versions where he is referred to as an Emperor, that including Final Fantasy XIV, which may have been the confusion.
Hmm. Let's see. Looking for Final Fantasy II Easter eggs.
Meh.
Let's see. Uh, duh, 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 duh. So, Final Fantasy 11 plays. Okay, I just looked up Easter eggs of Final Fantasy 2 to see where else references to it exist. Final Fantasy 9 plays the same music as the final dungeon of 2 in Pandemonium, only slowed down. Ramuh's story is also a reference to Yosef. 13 has an airship called the Palamecia, named after Emperor Matthias Palamecia and the Palamecian Empire. One of the espers in 12 is called Matthias. This is a reference to Emperor Matthias. There are actually 5 espers who reference the first 5 final bosses.
I want to make an Amadeus joke,
Fantasy-
but I can't work it in.
Say again?
I wanted to make an Amadeus joke, but I couldn't figure out exactly how to do it.
Final Fantasy 2 and 4 both have towns named Mysidia. In 5, Bartz, as a mystic knight, closely resembles Minwu. Leon's
who?
name was changed. Minwu.
No, I was
is one of
making
the
another
secondary
joke.
characters.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted. I'm purposefully trying to distract Hiro at this point.
That one worked. Let's see. Leon's name was changed in translation. His Japanese name is Leonhardt, something Final Fantasy VIII used later. I thought so. Squall Leonhardt.
Yep.
The Pit Fiend
Is
monster.
actually also referenced in Kingdom Hearts.
Yes, he's an actual character that makes an appearance in Kingdom Hearts. Although I think it's only in the Colosseum. I could be wrong.
Nope. World Between Worlds in Kingdom Hearts 1.
Oh, I forgot about that. It's been so long since I played the first Kingdom Hearts. The Pit Fiend monster from 12 refers to the monster of the same name in 2. Its bestiary entry even mentions the Jade Passage, which is where you find it. Amano's artwork of Leon was also the base of Caius's armor. On top of this, the Brain Blast quiz also references the Wild Rose. In 14, there's a reference to the Wild Rose password and also features a remix of Battle Theme from 2. In Lightning Returns, an accessory is called Soul of Minwu. The final boss also uses an attack called Falling Star. This attack has a very similar name and animation to the final boss in 2's Starfall attack. In 9, one of the dungeons is named Pandemonium. has the same music, only slower. And there's also a part where you need to answer the riddle of Ramu. It's the story of the party with Yosef. Okay.
Also in 14 from Endwalker, one of the final raid dungeons is named Pandemonium.
Ah, which makes sense because you mentioned there's a whole story arc there that's part of Final Fantasy 2, if I remember correctly. Or that's a reference to Final Fantasy 2. I think you mentioned that. But kind of all I've found so far on Final Fantasy 2. Seems like a short and sweet story, even with the addition of the re-release and the additional storyline. Any further commentary?
I got nothing. Of course, we knew that.
It's always worthy to, have some input in the conversation. It's how you learn. I regret that I'm not versed on a lot of lore behind Final Fantasy outside of 15, 16, and the remake of 7.
Making me wonder where Smasher is. Usually she's here for these conversations, but
Oh, yeah.
maybe she
would
got
be
distracted
chomping
by...
at the bit.
Yeah, maybe she got distracted by El Kiddo.
It's possible. They do that. They do that. Oh, look, a blue wizard.
Yep.
Blue.
In one of the re-releases, this is actually the first instance you see a white mage.
Ah,
A what mage?
White mage.
ah,
Otherwise, you're typically seeing red for any magic casted.
yeah. Um, that shopkeeper was a not a blue mage, or not a blue wizard, a blue mage. It's the dude that has like faces concealed with yellow eyes, wearing a blue robe and hat.
A rather iconic character for the series, outside of the Chocobo and the titular hero of light.
Correct. Blue mage in 14 is weird.
You have no idea.
Well, that's just coming from Kaori, who has played 14.
Oh, I figured. I'm just saying, for you would have no idea.
Oh, I
If you enjoy masochism, Blue Mage is for you.
Is that so? Damage self to cast spells that heal, or something like that?
No, go to enemy, get hit by signature spell of enemy, kill enemy, learn signature spell.
Ooh.
Ah, and that's like, in order to get the entire spell repertoire, you have to, face pull and face tank the bosses. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a few classes I've played in various games that are like that. I, needless to say, rarely used that class. The Simpsons game, Big Super Happy Fun game level mentions the evil Rashkin Corporation, which is in reference to Shinra from 7. Oh no, it's not even get hit by the spell once, it's get hit by the spell several times and defeat the enemy to actually. Oh no. No, no, no. It resets the counter if you die. No.
Oh, that would
Yep.
be that would be a no thank you from me. I would
That
not be
is
able
not
to
a class
tolerate.
I would play.
Yeah.
I would play it for 10 minutes, be like, all right, that's enough of that. I'm going to go pick a different class.
It's also a limited class, so you can't even use it for normal dungeon running. And it's literally the only reason I played it at all was completion. That's it.
So, limited class. So, in order to have that support in certain areas to do what you need to do, you would have to hate yourself, excruciatingly hate yourself. And then, even then, if you have no patience, you would be severely under-leveled and skilled to do what you need to do with it. Huh.
Yeah, it actually maxes out about 10 levels below all the other classes.
Oof.
Oh. Oh no. You also only level up by earning spells, not XP.
Oh,
That
yeah.
sounds horrible.
We're still in Final Fantasy
And
2, right?
no. This is from 14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we kind of jumped games on there on you.
Yeah.
Turner. Um,
By the
but
way, that came
yeah,
up because I happened to eyeball the Blue Mage character sprite, which isn't actually a class in 2 yet.
nope. Same with the White Mage.
Oh, hey, they found Sasquatch. But yeah, so this has been Final Fantasy II. We kind of did a quick plot synopsis, and I feel like the main reason we didn't really get a lot of content on this one probably has more to do with the fact that none of us have actually played 2, I don't believe, although I do remember it.
Yeah, it's one of those rare ones. I feel like a lot of people, or the way it sounds, is a lot of people didn't really get into Final Fantasy here in America until, what was it, 4 or 5 released?
It's possible. There's also the fact that it took them forever to release this in the US, because I'm going to scroll down to the unreleased English version. So in 1990, they released the original Final Fantasy, and it was very successful from what I'm reading here. The North American subsidiary decided to work on an English language localization of Final Fantasy II to be called Final Fantasy II Dark Shadow over Palakia. Okay, that's a weird name. Assigned to the project was Karu Moriyama, whose later work included script translations for 4 and Secret of Mana. Although a beta version was produced and the game was advertised in several Squaresoft trade publications, the long development time, the age of the original Japanese game, and the arrival of the Super Nintendo Entertainment Center led to Squaresoft to cancel work on the Final Fantasy II localization in favor of the recently released Final Fantasy IV, which was later retitled to 4, but when it released in America was titled Final Fantasy II. And this is where the confusion began, because Squaresoft decided to release Final Fantasy IV and retitle it to Final Fantasy II.
By the way, ahoy, penguin.
What up, Penguin?
We are doing a
So-
short stream of consciousness tonight, discussing Final Fantasy II. So wait, so the Final Fantasy IV was released as Final Fantasy II. What did they release in America under the title of Final Fantasy Singular?
It was called Final Fantasy.
Right.
So the original Final Fantasy was released as Final Fantasy in the States.
Oh, okay. And then they skipped 2 and 3 and went directly to 4, calling
Yeah,
it Final
'cause
Fantasy 2.
Yep. And I think when they saw how successful Final Fantasy was when they released it in the
Woo!
States,
Thank you for the bits,
they wanted-
Penguin.
hey, Final Fantasy bits. That when they saw how successful Final Fantasy was, because it released in, what was it, 88? Or no, that was 2. So it released in America in 90, I believe. Yeah, that's what I read. Final Fantasy, the original, released in America in 1990. It had originally come out in 86 or 7 in Japan. And when they saw how good that did, they decided to work on releasing 2 in America. But then, because of how long it was taking for the localization to finish, they were already on Final Fantasy 4. So they just decided to front load 4 into the States since the Super Nintendo had released, and they just retitled it. So there was a prototype cartridge of Final Fantasy II released on the NES in English. The project was, by Moriyama's own admission, still far from complete. They had so very limited memory capacity they could use for each game, and it was never really translating, but chopping up the information and cramming it back in. Additionally, their boss had no understanding in putting in extra work for the English version at the time. In 2003, when the game was finally released to English-speaking audiences as part of Final Fantasy Origins, it was released with new graphics, music, and a brand new translation under the supervision of Akira Kashiwagi.
Bless you.
A fan translation of the original game was also created prior to release of Origins and makes use of an original translation, as the existence of the prototype cartridge was not common knowledge at the time. Wow. According to Square's publicity department, the original Famicom release of Final Fantasy II sold 800,000 copies. As of March 2003, the game, including all released at the time, had shipped 1.28 million copies worldwide, with 1.08 million of those copies being shipped in Japan and 200,000 abroad. Despite having only been released in June of that year, as of September 2007, the PlayStation Portable version had shipped 90,000 copies in Japan and 70,000 in North America. Despite these high sales, the game had sold the fewest copies of any of the first 10 main games in the Final Fantasy series. That's some big numbers.
Yeah.
Anyways, what are your thoughts, gentlemen?
I think I'm probably not going to be going back in time and playing these particular #play old games.
Your reasoning, just out of curiosity, not out of criticism.
Lack of
As I judge you
time.
silently.
As I judge you silently.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. So much game to be had, not enough time to play.
I know.
This would be one of the. These two would be one of those games where I would record it, get the highlights, and then put it up on stream.
Yeah.
Because going from, or if you're looking purely for story to go up on stream, you're gonna be probably in game or on stream for like 10 minutes at a time if you're lucky. And it'll probably take up about the same amount of time as we've had on here already.
Yeah.
Say again, is that short or I'm
So it's as I was referencing that it seems like in this particular game, the majority of your gameplay is exploring dungeons.
Oh, right, because you're spending so
and-
much time grinding, there wouldn't be really any valley
Yeah.
content until you get to the bosses. I'm caught up now.
Yeah, the bosses, different dialogue options, story pieces or story bits, etc., etc.
Right. Mojo also says Final Fantasy games take less time than most of the games we play nowadays.
I believe that is entirely on how a person plays and what their intent for playing is. But that would default back.
I was gonna say I remember playing 7 till the timer maxed out, and then still only being about half to 2/3 of the way through the game.
With all your exploration, all of your min-maxing, leveling, exactly. Even older ones, I think, probably take up a lot of time when it comes to the grinding.
I know that's what
Hard.
keeps me from finishing Final Fantasy X or even restarting it. It was just the amount of grinding I've had to do. I would have to do. Because believe it or not, I played Final Fantasy X. Probably close to when it released, like within a couple of years, I think. And I got through most of it. I think I might have even gotten to the final boss before I realized that there was no way I was going to be able to take him on at my existing level, and didn't know at the time how to backtrack to do some more grinding to
more
get leveled
grinding.
up. Yeah. Because
I remember hearing a similar story.
Oh, hush, you! Just because I went and breezed through with leveling all my Aeons, and then had to go and yeah, I'm not going any further because that's just gonna be spoilers.
No. That's not what I'm referencing, though you are close to home on that one. I remember a certain individual getting like halfway through the game and still being like incredibly low level, like early 20s in level maybe, and the only reason was because they would keep running because they hated the combat.
Okay, yeah. We don't typically talk about that individual, sir. I'm not sure why you brought them up.
We generally don't talk about that individual, but it's relevant. Anyways, moving on from that, because that is... All I could say to that is, why do you play the game if you're not gonna play the game?
To be fair, said individual got to a certain point in the game and didn't care to go on because they didn't want to lose a very specific scene in their saves.
Oh, that I'm not really familiar with that part of the story.
that's a story for
But,
when we get to that particular game, I guess.
Perhaps.
Yep, I was gonna say that would be spoilers.
All right, well, gentlemen, we've got 5 minutes remaining. Do we have anything else we want to throw in on this Final Fantasy II topic?
I think we've been running down rabbit trails for a pretty extensive part of this particular show today, and probably bears mentioning that we should just go ahead and run off with it.
All right, so yes, go check out Tyrundeth on his channel. The link tree is in the chat. Check out Hiro on the Lagging Out Live Friday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Rumble, YouTube, or Twitch, possibly Kick. I will be back on. I will be back on this channel tomorrow night for more Mass Effect 3.
Oh, you made it to 3. Last I saw you were only on 2.
That was months ago, Senor. I looked back. I looked back through the time machine that is YouTube and saw that the last time I streamed Mass Effect 2 was in February. So it only took me 7 months to get back around to it. But
Wow.
we are finally there because I do want to see how the story of Mass Effect 3 ends through the Paragon path.
I will.
Don't really necessarily need to do the Renegade path afterwards. There's just too many games to be had, and I've promised my viewers that there will be a Final Fantasy game being played here after that. So and I still haven't figured out which one yet. I may talk to you guys and see which one, if you recommend one. Or so far we've got it narrowed down to like 3, 6 because I've never played one of the older style, 7 because I want to play the original of 7, and 10 because maybe finally I can reach the end of the story for Final Fantasy X, because that one, being my first Final Fantasy, is also probably my favorite Final Fantasy.
Well, I have news for you on that one, sir. If you're going to play Final Fantasy X for the story and end the story at Final Fantasy X, all well and dandy, but if you want the full story for Final Fantasy X, you'll have to play its sequel.
I'm aware that you have a secret ending at the end of Final Fantasy II where you get Cloud back. Is it Cloud?
No.
Yeah, Cloud? That's the character name?
But no, there's...
It's not Cloud.
Not Cloud.
No.
I forget.
Depending on who you're talking to, Titus or Titus.
Titus, yeah.
But parting shot here, if you're going to play 1 through 6 back to back,
no, I'm not doing them all.
By the time you get there,
I'm going to skip ahead to 6 or 7 or 10. I'm not going to do the entire woof. I'd be streaming until 2037 at that rate.
Yeah, I was going to say, by the time you get through 4, you're going to feel like you're listening constantly to the song at the end of Lamb Chop's Play Along.
I know that one. I know that song too well. All right. Well,
it's very much going to feel like it.
Yes.
I will just jump in one last little rib. Mass Effect 3's complete ending will vary based on your party members and choices in previous games.
Well, I guess I'll get some variant of the Paragon theme, the Paragon ending then, because Mojo and I learned yesterday that I missed a couple things in Mass Effect 2 because a couple of the ship models that are supposed to exist seem to be missing. And we're not entirely sure why, other than maybe we missed something from Mass Effect 2 and 1 that we should have picked up to get a complete collection. But we're not going to worry about it too much because that's kind of the name of the game when you're dealing with a trilogy like this, is there's going to be something that you miss.
Yeah, well, honestly, if you do it right, you will have the 100% true ending option available if you do everything right.
Well, I can guarantee we probably have not done everything right.
Well, we can discuss that later.
Yeah. Anywho, I'm going to sign off now. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming and hanging out and helping and rounding out my gaming knowledge a little bit. We will be back next week for Final Fantasy 3. In the meantime, enjoy whatever game you happen to be playing. Fair winds and fun gaming, y'all. Say goodnight, Hiro.
Good night, Hiro.
Say goodnight, Tyrundeth. Did we lose him?
Or don't. He might not be able to respond.
Okay. I'll till then, until tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Fair winds and fun gaming?
I did that already, but yes.
Oh. Bye-bye.